Any of our listeners can get in touch with you guys, can't they? So
Absolutely.
they've got something there now to deal with these complex issues that obviously involve a human side, which is the mental health aspect, and all different kinds of emotions that parents would feel or children would feel. But also, you've got this framework of the system that the school has to fit into, and they have to follow procedure. And when I was talking to Michael, he said that the failing was that they'd gone to an independent panel and they hadn't been independent.
Yeah.
So often that you find that these systems are in place, but they're not actually being followed. I just really commend you guys on the work that you do in the community, and I really wish you the best of luck. And like you said, a forum is happening on the 7th of June for our listeners, and make sure that they've got all the information. But before we wrap up, is there anything else that we haven't covered or that you would like to add or say?
Maybe Jamie, that we forgot to mention that I lead the casework um, for this project, and Jamie lead the research side. So Jamie is partnering at the moment with a lot of organization and policy makers in order for her to gather all the information that we need to inform policy and practice and change things at the top level.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? And
It's not just the casework. So the casework will feed obviously into the research, but the research as well will look at, like Jamie, I think mentioned, patterns across schools. And like I just said to you, what we're seeing at the moment is bullying all the time, that
mm,
racist bullying that cause the permanent or fixed term exclusion of some of the young people. But yeah, the research aspect is very important of this project because that's what we hoping to use to influence the change in policy and practice.
okay, Jamie, could you just talk a little bit about your research, and also we know that you're very qualified to do all this research. So maybe just tell a little bit about yourself as well,
Yeah.
and also your background.
Yeah, so like with the kind of the project, I think it's quite a special one just because we see in the third sector, like a lot of funding is really short and sometimes it's really like stop start with services. But like
Yeah.
I will, yeah, which we all kind of know, right? But with
Mm.
this one, like it is 3 years. So like me and Amira were like ride or die, we're in this together for three
Yeah.
years. We're very excited. We're gonna make a
Well,
change.
amazing.
Um
I mean, that's quite a long time in the third sector.
yeah, so that's like, yeah, that's a very long time. But yeah, so like Amira's kind of doing the case study, not the case study. Right, let me start again. So Amira's doing the casework, so she's going to be working with the families and with the young people, which is super important to make sure they've got that on the ground with the schools. But then with my side of the work, it's more about kind of like evidence and what is actually happening. So I think like a lot of us, we hear the stories, like the horror stories of what's happening in schools, what's happening in Wales. We hear, the long-term impact on young people's mental health, on their sense of belonging, their identity, all these things. But sometimes it's like the narrative that may come from the kind of the people in power, the influential people in Wales, like the Welsh government, policymakers, like they may be saying, well, look at the evidence, look at the stats. Like there's not a problem. There's not a problem with ethnic minority people being treated in a different way in schools, being disciplined in a different way, being disciplined more than their white peers. So like for us on this project, it's really important to like kind of break out those stories that may be said, when you meet up with your friends, your families, maybe when you're down the mosque, whatever it is, these casual meeting places, and just to kind of like formally write them down and record them, because otherwise we're all just talking to each other. We know how horrific the problem is, but we're not actually kind of getting it to those people who could make a change, especially as you mentioned, Jess, like with the anti-racist Wales plan. Like, yeah, again, it's a piece of like legislation, policy, whatever. Really exciting, but will anything change? Are we going to have an anti-racist nation by 2030? I hope so. But, as usual, it's like the kind of onus is on the people who the problem affects to actually give that evidence and to share their stories, which I wish there was a different way that we could do it. But in this project, we're going to kind of, as sensitively as we can, share those stories, collect them, evidence them, hopefully train up volunteers to help capture those stories. So it's not just me, white Welsh Jamie running around trying to extract these stories, which would be not good. We also want to, get these skills into the community, like the training, the research skills, so they can, similar to what you do, Jess, on your work. Like, why is it always white people talking for ethnic minority people? Like, I'm pretty sure they can speak for themselves, right? So yeah, just making sure that they have the skills, not in a patronizing way, of course, but just sharing and yeah, just making sure they feel empowered and safe to share those stories with us so we can share them. And then yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot now. I tend to do
No,
that.
No,
it's
that's
really
that's
good.
right.
It's
Yeah.
good. That's what we want. We want to get
Um,
into because you've made a really, really important point there, which I'd like to pick up on actually. When you say, why is it always like, you're saying you feel like it's always white people that are talking on behalf of ethnic minorities. And that is a really, really important point, because why? What is the answer to that question? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
well, yeah, no, I totally agree. It's just so frustrating because obviously you see historically there's such a big problem with yeah, like institutions, organizations, like whatever, going into communities, extracting the information that they need and then never actually feeding back to
Delivering the
them.
service, yeah,
Yeah,
or making a change.
Sorry, say that
sorry.
again, Amira.
So it's like a tick box exercise. So they would go to the community and they would ask the question, they get the answers, but they don't deliver the service that they are supposed to. A lot of people believe that there's a lot of tick boxing exercises happening, but with this project, it's totally different. We are reaching out to the communities. We want to hear from them. We want to document these lived experiences, so we can influence that change at a higher level. And unless they come and share with us their lived experiences, we won't be able to make that change. So I know, and I understand the frustration from the community. As a community organizer, as a community engagement person, I know that they've had enough of, listening and answering questions, but it's not enough. You need to come forward and you need to speak to us and you need to share your lived experiences and you need to believe that there will be a change. Even, the smallest steps will make a difference. It's like you put the seed and you see it grow in few, months or years. But unless they come forward and they are open with us and they share their experiences, we won't be able to make that change by ourselves.
Yeah.
100%.
And also that's the whole kind of philosophy behind this radio show as well, like unity in the community, to get other people, to get other voices to come on the radio and to tell us those true lived experiences, so we can try and make these systemic changes that need to be made across all of the systems that we have right now, to be honest, because I feel like we're living through this time. I talk about it a lot, like it's a big changing time and we're kind of like watching the failure of our systems in some way, and we are trying to build new ones together. And also, that involves getting people from all different backgrounds, all different communities, actually in positions of power as well, which obviously doesn't happen overnight, does it? It takes time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very important to have role models from communities, and you can relate to someone that looks like you, and I can understand young people when they say that in school as well. The fact that the educational force is not very diverse, and very low percentage of ethnic minority teachers are in senior positions as well. It's telling you that we have a problem that we need to actually tackle. We need to diversify our educational force, teachers, head teachers, deputy head teachers in senior leadership, and as well as teacher assistants, governors, all across the board. And if we don't see that change happening, young people cannot relate and cannot have role models.
Yeah, you mentioned governors there, which was something that Michael mentioned as well. I think that's really important. That maybe to get people involved in the governing body of schools. I guess that's something you're going to be looking at as well.
Not as part of the project, but yes, as Eyst, we are involved in diversifying governors in Swansea with Swansea Council. But it's a very important aspect as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to like add on as well to what Amira said. Like, it's really, yeah, that drive is really there, and like the thirst to diversify, all those senior leaders, the positions of power, politics, like you name it.
Media, that's why
Fantastic.
we're
Yeah,
doing it.
media.
Yeah.
Like, there's a long list, isn't there? But I also just wanted to say, like, I think there's a danger, especially with like the anti-racist Wales plan, to kind of make it into a tick box exercise again of like, oh, well, we've raised the stats of representation. We've got this many like black head teachers now. So like we're doing great. And it's like, yeah, but what about the experiences of those people in those positions? Because like it's not just about equality, it's about equity as well. So it's like, I think I do like worry a bit sometimes about maybe how the anti-racist Wales plan has been like not put together, because I think it's been really well done and like so many consultations, but how it's being executed. Like I think there needs to be a lot of accountability of what it is people actually want. Do they want more black and brown faces in, positions of power, or do they want them to have like equal say, equal power, equal influence? Like it's, I don't know. I think like there's a bit of a danger sometimes, and like going back to the schools as well, just like in terms of changes in schools, like I would say quite a lot of maybe staff are in a tricky position if they do want to make a change as well, just because each school has its own culture in terms of like how they perceive these problems and how they perceive racism. Because if you don't understand what racism is, then how are you going to tackle it? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's why a lot of the time when you start looking for solutions and you have these conversations, you start to realize that the solutions, maybe need to come from a different place, more of a human place, more of a therapeutic place as well. How we need to, as communities, really open up spaces and conversations like this.
Yeah.
Because like you say, it always comes down to a tick box, and how do you like implement things, how do you govern things? And I think that somehow we're going to have to like change on a more human level in a different way, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
It does. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because
We need that connection. It's difficult conversation to have, I understand, but we need to have those difficult conversations.
We must have those difficult conversations, and we must, confront people as well, but not in a horrible way, but in a like
threatening way. Of course, no. It's in a way that would change things for the better for everyone.
Yeah, and also when you were talking, I was thinking, about you saying, we need more teachers from diverse backgrounds. But like if those potential future teachers are in schools and they're suffering racism and they might get an exclusion on their record, that's going to have an impact of them going to university, and then like you say, taking matters in their own hands. Maybe they're going to do something where the police get involved, not obviously saying that always happens, but that can happen.
It does happen. It does happen though. Yeah, it does happen.
I mean, I know from being a mum as well, the way that things changed for my son the minute he hit like 14, was a man, looked like a man as opposed to a child. And then everything came on him,
Yeah.
Like he was profiled, obviously down to individual attitudes maybe, or location, but like you said, we have to kind of like together have these conversations, because Otherwise, we're not going to get those changes. And I think just to come from a place of curiosity and solutions and a place of humanity, of that we're all humans and these are our communities, you know. And whereas I think sometimes these systems, they make it feel like them and us.
Yeah, all the time. It's them and us.
And
Absolutely.
it's like those people in power and us down here. And it's like, no, this is our school. It's our community, you know? That's why I called the show Unity in the Community, because these are our schools, our children.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the people in power, anyway, they there to serve who? To serve the community.
Exactly. And I think they forget,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's
They
the
do
same
need a
way.
reminder.
Yeah, it's the same way as I never forget Sharish saying about you know, journalists. It's a service to people.
Yeah.
You know, politicians, it's a service to people. Schools, it's a service to people. Who are the people? They are our community, which includes everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today on Unity in the Community, and I will put all the details out in the show, so don't worry about that. And I look forward to the forum, and if there's anybody that you meet that wants to come on the radio and talk about their real life story and experience, please put them in touch with the show, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us, Jess.
Thanks.